The Hypercar/GT prototype class is set to explode in 2023, with 10 manufacturers so far confirmed to run in either IMSA, WEC or both. Today I'll take a look at the potential entry list for both championships and Le Mans. Starting with IMSA, we have 4 confirmed manufacturers for the GT prototype class. Porsche, LMDH, 2 cars run by Team Penske. BMW, LMDH, 2 cars run by Team RLL, who also ran their GTE effort. Cadillac, LMDH, run by Chip Ganassi Racing and Action Express Racing. Acura, LMDH, run by Wayne Taylor Racing and Meyer Shank Racing. For these last 2, it's not clear how many cars we'll see, as 3 of the teams only run 1 car in the DPI class. Only Chip Ganassi Racing doubled their DPI effort for the 2022 season. Another highly possible entry is Audi, as they will have an LMDH ready for 2023, but they don't have a confirmed customer yet for IMSA. However, they said that their car will make its debut at the Rolex 24, so they seem confident that someone will race their car. There's also a rumor that Peugeot's 9X8 Hypercar may be rebadged as a Dodge for IMSA, but there's no official proof of that. So I think it's safe to expect at least a 10-car entry list, but more importantly, 5 manufacturers, which is huge compared to this year's 2. Before we go over to the WEC, no less than Jack McKenzie from Triple Crown Racing will take you through how LMP1 fell.
Before we talk about LMP1's unfortunate end, we need to go back to the past, not future. Essentially, the downfall of LMP1 can be attributed to the controlling interests that be not learning their lesson. Sports car fans will undoubtedly be aware of the legendary prototype racing class that helmed the World Sports Car Championship grid during the 1980s, Group C. For those of you who don't know, the World Sports Car Championship was the endurance racing ancestor of the modern day WEC. Group C was the championship's top prototype class, and saw some of the world's legendary racing cars compete during its time, such as the Porsche 956, the Jaguar XJR9, the Sauber C9, and many others. It was doing well, but then came 1991. The organisers introduced a new set of regulations, which saw the engine philosophy shift to Formula 1 style 3.5 litre engines. In fact, in later years, Peugeot would use their V10 developed under these regulations in Formula 1. However, the problem with F1 style engines is F1 style costs, which, unsurprisingly, spiraled out of control. As a result, grid numbers fell through the floor, and by 1993 the World Sports Car Championship was dead. It took several years to rebuild sports car racing to what it had once been. The creation of the American Le Mans Series and later the World Endurance Championship contributed significantly to its recovery, as endurance racing once again had properly established championships. What rose from the ashes of Group C was LMP1. LMP1 essentially served the role once filled by Group C as the top prototype class used across the world, and it certainly created a legacy of its own. The legendary Audi vs Peugeot rivalry springs to mind, but unfortunately the organisers were destined to make the same mistakes. Over the years, the costs of top-flight prototype racing began to climb once again. The WEC, in a similar fashion to Formula 1, saw hybrid technology develop rapidly within the championship's top class, its second major innovation after the rapid development of diesel racing cars throughout the mid-2000s, which further contributed to the lurking monetary crisis. Just prior to the end of LMP1's peak, Porsche and Audi were both spending over $200 million a year each. LMP1 racing was once again approaching Formula 1 budgets, and that, for the second time, would prove to be the downfall of the class. Audi withdrew from the WEC in 2016, and Porsche pulled the plug on its LMP1 program the following year, leaving Toyota as the sole LMP1 hybrid runner. What followed were perhaps 2 of the dullest seasons of the WEC in the championship's history, as Toyota won 13 of the 16 races held during this period. The wave of underdeveloped non-hybrid privateer cars introduced for the 2018-19 season trailed helplessly in the dust. It's no secret that the WEC had been caught napping, but then it was time to do something about it. The WEC, in collaboration with the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, turned their attention to building a new class, or more specifically, 2 classes. A universal prototype class that focused on reducing costs, attracting manufacturers, and taking the interests of race teams into account. The classes that they created were the Le Mans Hypercar and LMDH.
Thanks for the history, Jack. Now we take a look at the bright future ahead, with 8 confirmed manufacturers for the Hypercar class. Toyota, Hypercar Hybrid, 2 factory cars. Peugeot, Hypercar Hybrid, also 2 factory cars. Ferrari, Hypercar, likely hybrid, 2 cars run by AF Corse. Porsche, LMDH, 2 cars run by Team Penske. Audi, LMDH, 2 cars run by Team WRT. Glickenhaus, Hypercar, at least 1 full season entry and likely 2 at Le Mans. Bicola/Vanwall, Hypercar with 1 car. Cadillac, LMDH, likely 2 cars run by Chip Ganassi Racing. Sadly, recent news has told us that Audi's LMDH program is on a pause, but even without them, 12 full season cars, which is incredible when you compare it to the LMP1 era entries. Additionally, Glickenhaus, Porsche and Audi will offer more customer cars, so the entry list may even grow more. Now for the big one, the 2023 24 Hours of Le Mans. Now I expect that much like Porsche and Ford did in 2018, Porsche and Cadillac will bring their IMSA cars over to Le Mans to double their chance of a victory. There's also a possibility that BMW and Acura will bring their cars over, because well, they have cars eligible for the top class of Le Mans. Why not try to win the biggest race in motorsport if you can? This means a potential of 10 manufacturers and 23 cars racing in the top class of Le Mans. The last time the top class had more than 20 entries was more than 10 years ago. I'm also sure that Hypercar will do a good job at making up for the loss of the GTE Pro class the same year. Just imagine GTE Pro at its height in 2018. More than 15 cars driven by the best drivers in the world, bumper to bumper, down the Mulsanne for hours, but with prototypes and hypercars. The future of endurance racing is bright. Ready?